FM News Talk 97.1.
On demand audio.
Being that it is Monday, we got a lot of stuff to get into. Our regular foreign policy expert, Stephen Yates, is the foreign policy expert with the D.C. International Advisory, former advisor as well to VP Dick Cheney. Stephen, good afternoon to you, sir.
Hi, Dana. Great to be back with you.
Mitt Romney's foreign policy remarks this morning are being hailed as a big success. What did you make of the nominee's speech?
I thought that the tone and the content was pretty good. It was a collection of a lot of things that he had addressed thematically over the course of what has been a very long primary season. But he tuned it up and focused on the events of the day as well, given what's happened in Benghazi, what's continuing to unfold in Egypt, and the Iranian threat as well. I think he committed to shaping events, which is something that I have lamented as absent among our leadership in recent times. But cautious, made clear he's not looking to start or enter new wars, but when threats present themselves, he would take the responsibility to shape things to our advantage.
Right. And he mentioned, too, he hit back in a couple of, in his prepared remarks, it took a couple of paragraphs, going after the president's cuts to defense. And I don't think Romney has ever believed that defense spending is a sacred cow, but that it could be, handled better or, what have you. But he said that, the cuts that the president wants to implement would devastate our military. How would that affect our ability to be able to secure our interests? I mean, we're hearing, Stephen, that the number one problems with all of these embassy attacks and the Benghazi attack was that none of them had adequate security, and we're seeing documents now come forward attesting to this. How much more dire would these cutbacks make the situation?
I think it's very significant because there's 2 points to what we do to influence events in the world. I mean, one is what we actually have the capability to do, and then the other is the perception of what we have the capability to do and willingness to go forth and take risks or intervene where needed. And right now, I think across this extremely volatile region, people don't believe that President Obama and the United States broadly are prepared to do very much. And so they see a vacuum that they're more than happy to fill. And so one is making a clear commitment, which I think Romney has done. The devastating cuts, I think, are very, very true. And President Obama has done them in the most passive-aggressive way. The Senate, under his party's leadership, has failed to ever pass a budget during his presidency. And so then we have this fiscal cliff, which is their own form of suicide budgetarily when it comes to defense commitments. So he's claiming, well, this is the Congress's doing, but really it's his lack of leadership. I think it's a willful lack of leadership that's letting a military he ultimately doesn't really respect except when he serves him.
He said there will be no flexibility with Vladimir Putin, a direct jab at the president, who was caught, obviously, on that hot mic, telling Putin's number two that, I'll be more flexible after the election. What kind of message do you think that's going to send to Russia?
Well, I think it's important. I mean, there are a couple of forces out there in the world that I think would really love to see Barack Obama win. And one of them is Russia. It has loved the reset policy. Whatever that has meant, it has meant for a much freer hand for Russia. And I think the Islamists across the region would love to see President Obama reelected because largely he has done little to inhibit the progress they've made steadily in the recent 2 years. And so I think the reset statement was the flexibility statement was very, very important and good. I hope that this is among those things that should jumping Joe Biden start to talk about misspoken remarks by Romney here or there. The Obama-Biden list is quite long, and they're consequential, too.
Right. And right after he discussed, too, the president's cuts to military, I thought this was very smart. Romney hit out at NATO as well. He not so much hit out, but he encouraged them to honor the commitment that they had to basically spend their own a percentage of their own GDP towards security. And he said that only 3 of the 28 NATO nations actually meet this benchmark. And he and I thought in a polite way said the United States is tired of pulling all of the security weight for you. Why don't you all pitch in and help? I thought that was really strong. Is that I think it needs to get more attention than I think it has. Is that a realistic expectation?
I think it's reality we face. Really, I think that we have to find a way to exercise our influence efficiently abroad so that the threats don't come to our shores. But we recognize the reality that we have overspent like a drunken sailor for a long time. And so we're going to face fiscal pressures. We're going to have to make tough choices. All of those buzzwords are going to apply. I think what Romney is doing is carving out what I see as the rational missing middle in not pulling back and just letting events play out as they may, but at the same time telling others, look, we're with you in commitment. We will stand by your side, but we are not pulling you on our back.
One of the things that this speech got into, which was echoed by Lara Logan, who she gave an address over the weekend where she said that 11 years later, the Taliban, al-Qaeda, they hate us now more than ever, and they have not been vanquished. They're coming back. And she said, quote, I can't stand that there's this major lie being propagated. And this, I contrast that with what the State Department under Barack Obama has said, that the war on terror is over. The president has talked about having actual discussions with the Taliban, including them in on negotiations. And then tying that into Romney's speech, Romney seemed to, what he said seemed to echo what Lara Logan said, is that al-Qaeda is a strong force. The Taliban is still a strong force. And he said the president is fond of saying that the tide of war is receding. I want to believe that as much as anyone, but it's not happening. That's a big problem that we have with the Obama administration. Do you think, Stephen, they can't honestly believe that the war on terror is over and that the Taliban is this friendly entity with whom we can negotiate?
Unless they're just absolutely blinded by ideology, they can't ignore the facts that are presented to us. Unfortunately, we've talked about this before. I mean, when you're dealing with hardened terrorists and hardened terrorist networks, there is no reform, there is no negotiation, there's no avoiding their hatred of us. They have already sort of crossed the Rubicon and are dedicated to perpetual violence against us. There's only one way you can keep them at bay, and that's to persistently push back the fight to them. Now, we want to do it in a more balanced way where we have a sovereign Afghanistan leading and we do some things that would be support, maybe not necessarily forever having troops based in their country, but we can't engage in the fantasy that just by turning our backs and declaring a war over on our end, that the enemy has somehow undeclared its war on us.
Right. Switching focus a little bit here, the latest from the New York Times and Daily Mail, Israel launches airstrikes after attacks from Gaza, rocket fire being exchanged. The last time something like this happened, Egypt stepped in to mediate a truce and get Gaza to recommit to this ceasefire. They're obviously not in any position to step into that role again this time. How is this going? Is this something that will fizzle out, or could this basically erupt into something even bigger?
I think that we have to accept it's possible that it could spiral out of control. I hope it doesn't. There's always a chance these things sort of fizzle and pop and go back, but then come back again in another time in another form. But this is one of the great risks. Frankly, I know I'm a partisan and I actually care about the outcome of the election. But the more people over there believe that Romney has a chance of winning, the more they'll hedge their bets, and these things will stay under control until they see the outcome.
Yeah, and that could be. Sometimes I keep thinking October surprise every time I hear something like this in the headlines, because there was a study that came out that said basically this time right now is when Americans are most vulnerable.
That's absolutely true, and of course, there's nothing magical about October, but things can happen at any time. And unfortunately, really, there's been a lot of pressure building. I mean, we've got this unusual trend of uncertainty spreading across the Middle East that continues to go unabated. And you've got an Iran where you've got Ahmadinejad winding down his tenure. Who knows what he'll do before he leaves? And Prime Minister Netanyahu facing pressure and uncertainty of his own. Drones and other kinds of things constantly testing their sovereign territory. It's a volatile mix, and it's very possible we could have an October surprise. Right.
And real quick before we let you go as well, the latest with all of the with the Benghazi cover-up. I can't call it anything else but a cover-up at this point. Jake Tapper over at ABC has reported that the security team commander said that Chris Stevens, the ambassador over in Benghazi, he wanted his team to stay in Libya past August, but he had also been asking the State Department for increased security. The State Department had turned them down. I can't imagine why our media, I mean, obviously, biased media, so on and so forth, we can say that all day. This is this seems to me the biggest national security, one of the biggest national security bungles that this administration has made in regards to this. And I keep wondering how many more of our embassies now are at risk because now the Obama administration doesn't even want to talk about this. This seems to me, Stephen, this should be enough to cost him an election at least, but they're acting as though this is no big deal, which it's obviously not.
I think that they're just banking on the idea that it's geographically remote and Americans are just unlikely to want to face the reality that a conflict continues to go on. But it's definitely right up there with Jimmy Carter's failed effort to rescue the hostages in terms of a bungle with national security consequences, potential lasting strategic consequences. And they can basically take their choice. Did they lie, or were they really that inept and maybe asleep at the switch? Because there were clear warning signs, and really I think anybody, even without intelligence briefings, should have seen this. But the president had the virtue of skipping his intelligence briefings and ignoring these developments, and I think it is actually a very sizable scandal. The question is the appetite of the American people. I think Paul Ryan's going to have to hit it in his debate with Vice President Biden, and Governor Romney is going to need to persist in this as one of the major themes that he drives forward.
Well, and that's foreign policy, I believe, is the next presidential matchup, and I hope to see it come up in the VP debate as well. Stephen Yates, D.C. International Advisory, always a pleasure. We so appreciate your perspective every Monday.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you. Take care.